division of polynomials, you have to use something you've done already, long division. How you do long division back when you were in 5th grade is exactly how you're going to do long division now, with the same idea of figuring out what terms go in and then also subtracting and dropping things down. How you did it back in 5th grade, how you did it back in 6th grade is exactly how you are going to do it now. Okay? It's going to look a little bit different, and we have some rules that we're going to go through step by step in order to make this a little bit easier for us. Okay? First thing we need to identify is dividend and divisor. Okay? The dividend is usually the number that comes in front. It's the one that's going to be a little bit larger. The divisor is the second one, a little bit smaller. Our divisor, when you use long division, is always going to be a binomial. If it's not a binomial, it's just one term, a monomial, all you need to do is divide the monomial by each parts, each one of the parts. Okay? So if that was just divided by x, you would divide each one of these terms just by x. And we set this up. Divisor goes on the outside, our dividend goes on the inside. Okay? Divide the first term of the dividend by the first term of the divisor. What that'll do is that'll help us out on our next step. So 2x cubed divided by x. And we get what here? 2x squared. Okay? Now the reason why we need that 2x squared is because we need to match up this number right here, that 2x cubed. We need to find out, what do I have to multiply x by to give me 2x cubed? Okay? Now you can do that in your head. There's going to be times when you move forward and you start getting a little bit better at this. You can just say, well, I have a 1 here and I have a 2 there, so I need to multiply by 2. I have 1x and I need 3, so I need 2 more x's, hence 2x squared.
So you're ignoring the h right now? H is a non-factor?
There's no h.
It's a plus 1.
It's a plus 1. Once you get this number, it goes on top. You put it on top. It's part of your quotient. It's part of your answer. Okay? It's part of your answer. Okay? And that's where we are so far. Step 1, divide the first term of the dividend by the first term of the divisor. That number goes on top. Goes on top. Second step to this. Okay? Multiply that number by the divisor. So we're going to take this 2x squared and we're going to multiply it by x plus. We're going to multiply it by x plus 1. Okay? And you see a little note down there. It's going to say distribute. That's how you multiply a monomial, which is your answer that you got from dividing, by a binomial, which is your divisor. Remember, your divisor is going to be 2 terms. Okay? So you distribute. This will go to both parts. 2x cubed plus 2x squared. Okay? Step 3. Now, once we get that answer, we bring it up, subtract. All right? Notice what I'm going to do. I'm going to put that subtraction sign in a circle. You don't want to confuse it with a negative. You want to make sure you're subtracting. You're going to subtract both parts. You're going to subtract the x cubes. You're going to subtract the x squareds. What should happen? What should happen? The first one should cancel. Remember, that's the whole point. And this is where, you're multiplying. This is why you're dividing to get that 2x squared first. So you know what you can multiply x by in order to give you 2x cubed. Okay. Now before we move on, I just want to make sure everybody's good here. Now we subtract. Right? X, they cancel. 1x minus 2x is going to give us negative x squared. Okay? So, the last step to this, we subtract, then we drop down the next term, and then finally,
Repeat step 1.
Repeat step 1. What that means is, you go back to step 1, and you do it again. You divide the first term of the dividend by the first term of the divisor. You really just repeat it again. That's why I said, Brian, you can hold off a little bit because we're going to do the same thing again. All right? But
the one thing I get confused about is why it seems like you ignore the 1.
Here?
Yes.
Now, we didn't really ignore the 1. We're focused on eliminating, basically, we're focused on getting rid of those first terms. Okay? Now, where does this 1 come into play? It doesn't come into play deciding on what number goes on top, but where it comes in is how you get that 2x squared. Because when you distribute, see how we distributed the 2x squared to x and to 1?
Yeah.
That's where the 1 comes in. Is this second term here, this 2x squared. And it'll come into effect when we have to worry about this second part. Okay? Now, Dylan, watch where this comes up. All right? So what we do is we divide the first term of the dividend by the first term of the divisor. Negative x squared over x. A negative divided by a positive gives us a negative. X squared divided by x gives us x. This number goes on top. Okay? That number goes on top. Right? Multiply that number by the divisor. Multiply that number by the divisor. And Dylan, this is where it's really going to come into play here. Okay? So you multiply negative x squared minus x. Now we bring this up. Negative x squared minus x. Now we subtract. Keep that negative on the outside. I circle it, like I said, I circle it to just distinguish it from like the negative sign. I don't want you to think that negative in front of x squared here is your minus sign already. Then you just start adding things. You have to remember to subtract. Okay, and that's why that negative goes on the outside. And like I said again, these two parts will cancel. Those two parts will cancel. Say it again?
Negative minus negative is possible.
Ooh, a negative minus a negative turns into plus. So a negative plus negative x squared plus x squared gives you 0. Okay? And then we finish off this last part. Now, same thing. Here, negative 2 minus negative 1 is really negative 2 plus 1.
So it's negative 1. The dividend is always first,
Yeah.
and it's always smaller. Not always smaller, but usually.
No, dividend will probably be a little bit bigger. So we drop the next term down, and we go back to step 1. You go back to the top. Okay? And you go through the same steps. What am I I got to divide negative x and x. So, negative x divided by x gives us what?
1.
What kind of 1 though?
Negative 1.
Negative 1. Okay? That number goes on top. Multiply that number by the divisor. Okay? Multiply that number by the divisor.
The dividend is being divided by the divisor.
Distribute negative x minus 1. And that's what goes here. Then we subtract. Our negative x's cancel. Because negative x minus a negative x is really negative x plus x. And then the last part of this, 3 minus negative 1 is really 4. That 4 at the bottom is going to be our what? Remainder. Okay? What we do with the remainder is we write the remainder over the divisor. That's how you finish this. So you write plus 4 over x plus 1. Okay? So your answer to this, your answer is right up here at the top. 2x squared minus x minus 1 plus 4 over x plus 1. Okay? Use the steps that we talked about. Use the idea. These steps break down what you need to do. Okay? You can see how the process of long division is still the same. Red are the same for the steps in the part in green. There's not a lot of, if this happens, you have to do that. There's not a lot of differences. How you do this problem for long division is basically how you'll do 90% of the other problems for long division. Okay? There's not a lot of, long division is good in the sense where